The Lin clan was already about to wake up. This splash of tea just happened to open her eyes. She immediately began to cry, "Mother, why are you still saving me? Let me die. It's already been 4 years and we still haven't found her. My daughter must have met with misfortune. I also don't want to live anymore." When her husband died, she had thought of committing suicide, but at that time, she didn't have the courage. She could only rely on her hatred for Wuxia, for the bandits, for the unfairness of fate, and even for the matriarch and Upinion to survive. But in the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. That rootless hatred had more or less dissipated. Her heart became more and more empty. When she looked back, she discovered that her children and the matriarch had already been pushed far away. They could no longer approach her. Just as she was feeling completely disheartened, the news that Wuxia wasn't the descendant of the Marquis household came. She still had a daughter who was wandering outside, waiting for her to save her. Like a ghost walking in the endless darkness, she finally saw a ray of light leading her to heaven. She threw herself at it without any regard for her life. But she walked, and waited for another 4 years. She was already exhausted and couldn't hold on any longer. Even though she knew that her death would stir up rumors in the manor, even though she knew that her unsightly death would cause her family to discover clues and bring trouble to her family, she didn't care about any of it. She just wanted to quickly go down to accompany her husband and daughter. She didn't want to be burdened by living in this world. The matriarch was so angry that her breathing became uneven. She clutched her chest and coughed violently. If she had a whip in her hand, she wouldn't have been as polite as Xiang'er. She would have already lashed the Lin clan's face. Wan Qiu fed her a bottle of honeydew and repeatedly patted her back. Only then did she regain her strength. She said word by word, "I didn't save you. If I could, I wouldn't be able to choke you to death with my own hands." Seeing the Lin clan's heartbroken expression, she continued, "You don't have to seek death. Let me tell you, your daughter has been found. If you're willing to live peacefully, I'll take her back to the manor another day. Could it be that the family you really owed this mother and daughter in her previous life, so she came to collect her debt in this life? If she didn't cause chaos in the family they wouldn't be able to live peacefully, right?" She couldn't think about it. Once she thought about it, her heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys would hurt everywhere. The matriarch rubbed her chest, her expression extremely ugly. The Lin clan stared at her in shock and anxiously asked, "My daughter has been found. Where is she? Quickly take me to see her. Hurry up." She also saw that the marks on the Lin clan's necks had disappeared. These past few days, she had been clamoring to see her daughter. After thinking it over, she felt that it would be good to let them see each other first, so that they wouldn't be restless and create more trouble. The members of the Lin clan changed out of the plain clothes that they had worn for 14 years and put on a gold-threaded, butterfly-patterned dress. They tidied themselves up and went to meet their daughter in high spirits. As soon as they stepped out of the fu, someone immediately reported the news to Wuxia. "Oh, you look so happy. Are you sure?" Wuxia was building a pot of fiery red roses. "I'm sure. She doesn't even wear plain clothes anymore. She's wearing a red, gold-inlaid dress. She's even saying things like, 'I miss my daughter so much.'" A very unremarkable-looking servant girl solemnly swore. Wuxia carelessly cut off a beautifully blooming rose. Holding the stem, she waved her hand and said, "It's fine. You can leave." She knew what she should know, and she also knew what she should not know. As a result, she did not place people around the Lin clan. She only bribed a few low-level servant girls to guard against the Lin clan's mischief. However, after today, she was afraid that she would have to add a few more nails. This prefecture was about to change. Lulu stuffed 2 taels of silver into the servant girl's hands and ordered her to quietly leave through the corner gate. When she came back, she asked curiously, miss, madam hasn't smiled or left the house in 14 years. What do you think is wrong with her today? Could it be that hanging herself has enlightened her brain? It's not that she's enlightened, but that she has a backbone. Once a person has a backbone, their mental state will naturally change. Wuxia plucked the rose petals one by one into the bowl. Although she had a smile on her face, her eyes were very cold. Lulu quietly sized up her expression and did not dare to ask again. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. Wuxia had a premonition that the main character was about to return. Her initial indifferent attitude was now replaced by apprehension. She did not covet anything from the family Yu. She only wanted to stay by Yu Pinyan's side. She was originally a ghost. If it wasn't for Yu Pinyan, she would not be at ease to take root in this strange world. If the main character returned and she left, it would be the same as digging out her roots while she was still alive. Sooner or later, she would slowly wither and die. She was not weak, but she liked to live by Yu Pinyan's side. She felt at ease and happy. At that time, she magnanimously said that she would return to her own place. But when it came to it, she found that if anyone dared to snatch her older brother, she would fight with them. Although the family Shen were her blood relatives, they had never raised her. All her unwillingness turned into hatred and she did not hesitate to leave that home and head to the capital. 14 years of suffering was not worth mentioning. If it was possible, she would do all she could to erase all the stains from her past. Fortunately, Shen Fu had already passed away and Shen Mu would not be able to last for more than a few days. Shen Yuanqi was still staying in Lingnan as a servant. The pressure on her body was instantly reduced by more than half, leaving only Zhao family and that lowly spawn in the Marquis family. She needed to personally deal with that lowly spawn, but Zhao family was a bit difficult to deal with. But an arm could not wring a thigh. With family Yu's power, dealing with a Zhao family without any foundation should not be a problem, right? Thinking of this, she looked at the old mama and asked, "Qin mama, what does my older brother do?" Mama Qin took out a few plasters and applied them on Ji Yunshu's leg. She lowered her voice and said, "Your older brother is the commander-in-chief. The entire Han dynasty only listens to His Majesty's orders. Not to mention the first and second rank officials, even the supreme princes and dukes have to bow down when they see him." It's this. Shen Miaoqi's heart was beating wildly. She completely did not think that Yu Pinyan had such a high position. Even though the family Shen was wealthy, but compared to the aristocratic families, it was much worse. This caused Shen Miaoqi's vision to be narrow and her knowledge was not high. She did not understand what the commander did but grasped the most important information. She was now one of the top noble ladies in the Han dynasty. She finally obtained the high and mighty life that she had always dreamed of. Even though there were many haze and flaws in this life, it did not matter. She believed that with her own methods, she would be able to get rid of them one by one. Taking out the handkerchief from her collar, she used an extremely elegant posture to cover the sneer on her lips. Just at this time, a nun outside the door said, "Benefactor Shen, someone came to see you. Please move to the main hall." Qin Mama was very happy when she heard this and smiled, "Young miss, quickly change your clothes. It must be the old lady and Furen who came to see you." Shen Miaoqi was at a loss for a moment and quickly tidied up her hair. She then took out the most appropriate dress from the chest and hurriedly changed into it. Miaoqi greets Zumo, greets mother. Just as she entered the hall, she gracefully bowed and displayed the elegant bearing that she had learned from Qin Mama to the extreme. 14 years old was the most tender age and in addition, she looked like the Lin clan. Even though her appearance was not peerless, it was as gentle as water. Her eyebrows were faint and she looked very clean. The Lin clan's eyes lit up and rushed over to pull her into their embrace and started crying, "My pitiful daughter, mother finally saw you. You left for 14 years. Mother missed you so much that her liver and intestines were broken and she almost could not live. Mother, daughter also missed you." Shen Miaoqi plunged into the arms of this luxuriously dressed woman without any trace of restraint or awkwardness. It was as if the 14 years of separation was just an illusion. The old lady thanked the nun who led the way and sat down on the seat of honor. She used a dark and unfathomable gaze to size up the crying mother and daughter. This mother and daughter, no matter if it was their appearance or mannerisms, they were all 80 to 90% similar. If an outsider were to see them, they would definitely praise them as a weak willow in the wind, delicate and pitiful. However, in the old lady's eyes, it became annoying. One crying face in the family was already enough. Now there was another one. Perhaps when she was young, she admired this kind of woman and felt that gentle and graceful were more moving. Otherwise, she would not have chosen the Lin clan for her son. However, as the years went by and the world changed, she gradually felt that a woman like Xiang, who was as passionate as fire, was more likable. When she was with her, no matter how difficult it was, she would not feel tired. Unlike these two. It was obviously a happy occasion, but why did it look like their parents had died? Thinking of this, the old lady hurriedly spat and secretly complained to Buddha about her misspoken words. In fact, the old lady could not be blamed for being too biased. Anyone who was tortured by a crying face for 14 years would have their nerves become quite fragile. The author has something to say: thank you to my little cute creatures, and also thank all the friends who supported the original novel. Moi. That day, Yu Pinyin did not say a single word of nonsense to her, nor did he ask her how she had been for the past 14 years. She was indeed relieved, but at the same time, she felt rather dissatisfied. She heaved a sigh of relief because she knew that even if the Shen family had wronged her in the first place, her behavior was also very reprehensible. She could not tell outsiders about it. If Yu Pinyin really asked her about it, she really did not dare to lie in front of him. She was dissatisfied because Yu Pinyin did not care about her at all. She clenched her tear-stained handkerchief and slowly opened her mouth, replying to grandmother, "Granddaughter has been suffering for these 14 years. At first, the Shen family treated me well. But after the disaster 4 years ago, they lost all their wealth and gradually became worse. If I didn't hear Mother Shen talking to her son about my background, I wouldn't have known that my family was still thousands of miles away. I was afraid that they would sell me to a large family as a slave or servant. I had no choice but to steal my childhood swaddling clothes to escape. I rushed all the way to the capital but met with bandits. I narrowly escaped death. Fortunately, I was saved by Zhao Daren's family. That is how we met today." She picked up her handkerchief to wipe her tears. She omitted what she should, concealed what she should, and distorted what she should. She directly molded herself into an orphan girl who had traveled thousands of miles to find her family and suffered hardships. This caused Mrs. Lin to cry bitterly again. She hugged her and scolded the Shen family for being wicked. If not for the fact that Zhao and Shen's family was in the capital, Shen Miaoqi also wanted to arrange the Zhao family so that the Marquis household would dispose of the Zhao family. Old Lady Tai Tai looked at her deeply and gently twirled her prayer beads. Mama Ma, who was standing at the side, secretly shook her head. She thought that a Shang clan girl was indeed a Shang clan girl. This nature of seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages was deeply rooted in her bone marrow. Not only did she cheat the family Shen, she also stepped on them a few times and removed herself completely. It was not a bad thing to have scheming methods. However, the bad thing was that this scheming method was not used in the right place. Even the family Shen who raised her could be slandered and abandoned as she wished. Wouldn't she be even colder to the family Yu who did not have any accumulated feelings for her? Even if she brought her back, old Lady Tai Tai would not be able to open her heart to her. Moreover, she had such a fate. She did not know what the Dragon Scale Guard did for a living. Otherwise, she would not put on such a show. Thinking of this, Mama Ma looked at Mistress and saw that she was indeed tired. She lightly waved her hand, "All right, the past is already in the past. It is good that she is back. You should speak less about the Lin clan. I am tired and will go to the rear hall to discuss Buddhism with Great Master Fu Hui. You two can stay behind and talk about your personal matters. The Lin clan and Shen Miao Qi could not ask for more and quickly sent her to the door. Because of the 3 family members that she met, only the Lin clan was the closest to her. Shen Miao Qi naturally had to win over the Lin clan first. Moreover, she inquired many times but did not understand the situation of the prefecture Yu from Qin Momo. She only thought that the prefecture Yu was the same as other families and that the matters of the inner residence were all decided by the matriarch. Therefore, she was more attentive to the Lin clan. The mother and daughter pair snuggled together and talked for a while. Shen Miao Qi probed, "Mother, I was forced to be a servant in the Zhao family for 4 years. If this matter was spread out, would the Marquis family lose face? My child, you do not need to worry. Your older brother has already taken care of this matter properly." The Lin clan tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and softly said, "That Zhao and Shun can be considered to have taken advantage of the heavens. Your older brother gave him a position in Lianghuai and the whole family will move to Yangzhou in a few days. They will not be able to return for 4 to 5 years. If he says 1 or 2 unpleasant words, your older brother will definitely make him fall miserably no matter how high he climbs, ending up with a broken family. How would he dare? Then what about 4 to 5 years later? Yangzhou is not far from the capital." Shen Miao Qi pretended to be ignorant and said. In her opinion, it would be best to clean up all the people who knew about this matter or send them far away to Yunzhou and not allow them to enter the capital for the rest of their lives. Even though she did not understand politics, she knew that Yangzhou was the most prosperous place in the Great Han Dynasty. Wouldn't it be too convenient for Zhao and Shun to be an official there? Especially Zhao Jin. She had tolerated her for 4 years and could not bear to see her rely on herself to gain riches and honor. 4 to 5 years later, transfer to another place. In short, I will not let his family leak out your matter. Fortunately, that Zhao and Shun is an upright person and did not make excessive demands. The Lin clan patted their daughter's back. Shen Miao Qi's heart was filled with dissatisfaction but she could not say it. No matter how unaccomplished Zhao and Shun was, he was still a 4th-ranked court official. She was a weak female and would not be able to deal with him. However, her relationship with Yu Pinyin was indifferent and she did not have any hopes so she could only endure for the time being. Fortunately, even though the Lin clan had not met her face to face for 14 years, their feelings for her were very deep. This was the most fortunate thing. The Lin clan was moved when they heard this and nodded, "This is a good idea. Wait for mother to go back and think it over for a few days before speaking to your grandmother. You do not know how much your grandmother and older brother spoil that star of misfortune." Their words revealed extreme dissatisfaction. Shen Miao Qi nodded aggrievedly. On this side, the mother and daughter finished discussing. On the other side, the matriarch left to call the Lin clan back. The Lin clan was extremely unwilling and pleaded, "Mother, let's bring her back home today." No. The matriarch directly refused, "Wait for me to talk to Xiang before bringing her back. My daughter can go back whenever she wants to. Why do you need to inform her?" The Lin clan was so angry that their faces turned white. Shen Miao Qi secretly clenched her handkerchief. The matriarch's mouth scolded but her eyes were full of smiles. Xiang, her girl's personality is fierce and her brain is also extremely intelligent. If she did not know, she would bring her back and with a few words, she would be able to clean Miao Qi's background. If you do not want her to cause unrest in the household, then go back today. I will not stop you. Finishing her words, she ordered people to pack up. These years, the Lin clan had suffered a few losses in the hands of Yu Xiang. Everyone was afraid that she would cry but Yu Xiang was not afraid. She held a plate of melon seeds and watched her as if she was a clown. She could not help but want to expose her identity several times but was blocked by her due to a freak combination of factors. She was almost angered to death. But the matriarch and Upinion were always on her side, pressuring her to the point that she could not lift her head. The Lin clan hated Yuxiang very much. In this hatred, there was a trace of undetectable fear. Hearing the matriarch's words, they could only silently nod their heads. Shen Miaoqi also nodded her head. Her expression was very obedient, but she secretly raised her guard against Yuxiang. It seemed that this lowly child was not easy to deal with. She needed to be cautious when she went back. The author has something to say. Thank you to my little adorable creatures, and also thank all the friends who supported the original novel. 100 hot kisses for you. Older brother, stay here and listen to what she wants to say. Yuxiang whispered into Upinion's ear. Upinion took 2 more steps forward. When his younger sister used her fingertips to lightly poke his chest, he smiled and placed her in the wheelchair. He repeatedly reminded Tao Hong and Lu Lu to take care of her carefully. Everyone left the main hall. Upinion sat next to the old madam, who was resting with her eyes closed. He asked, "What do you want to say?" The Lin clan first poured herself a cup of hot tea and slowly sipped it. Only then did she speak, "Since Cheer has been found, shouldn't we send Yuxiang away?" When she saw the old madam suddenly open her eyes and look at her, she quickly added, "We're not expelling her from the family. We're just saying that she's sick and is being released to the farmstead. She will always be an eyesore if she stays in the Fu." Without waiting for the old madam to speak, Upinion crushed the armrest of the chair and sneered, "If you feel that Xiang'er is an eyesore, then pack up your things and move to Shui Yu Nunnery to accompany Shen Miaoqi. You don't need to come back in this lifetime." How can you speak to me like this?" The Lin clan looked at him in disbelief. "Why can't I speak to you like this? I am Marquis Yongla. This is Marquis Yongla. If I want someone to stay, that person must stay. If I want someone to leave, that person must immediately scram. I am your mother. You are unfilial." The Lin clan stood up and yelled at him. "My mother had already died on the day my father passed away. The current you is just a wisp of a spirit." Upinion shook off the sawdust in his palm and coldly said, "These words were personally said by you. How could you forget? Since you are a lonely spirit, then you should peacefully stay in the tomb. Do not go around causing trouble. Otherwise, you will inevitably end up with your spirit scattered." The old madam put down her prayer beads and a mocking smile appeared on her face. Dead. 14 years ago, she had already treated this daughter-in-law as dead. But you should have died cleanly. Why did you suddenly become a corpse? She raised her own child. Even if they were not related by blood, they still had feelings. How could she just abandon them like that? The Lin clan was indeed heartless. No wonder Shen Miaoqi treated the family Shen that way and took after her. The Lin clan was speechless and looked on helplessly as her son left in large strides. He even spat out words that made her heart cold, "If you dare to mention this matter in the future, you and Shen Miaoqi will scram out of the Marquis household. I, Upinion, have always been someone who does not recognize anyone. Don't try in vain to challenge my patience." The Lin clan panted and looked at the old madam, her eyes full of pleading. "If you dare to expose Xiang'er's identity in front of her and send her away privately, you can take the divorce letter and go home." Old Mistress Ma winked at Nanny Ma, and Nanny Ma immediately stepped forward to drag Lin Shi, who was on the verge of collapsing, away. In the garden, Yu Siyu stood in front of a rockery and waited for Yu Xiang, who was passing by. "Mother's sweetheart is coming back. When the time comes, there will be no place for you to stand in this prefecture. Are you afraid?" She slightly leaned forward and the smile on her face was incomparably sweet, but it was like a layer of honey poison. Yu Xiang raised her chin and casually said, older brother is Marquis Yongle and this is Marquis Yongle. As long as older brother is here, there will always be a place for me to stand in the Marquis household. Don't forget, I am also older brother's sweetheart. It's hard to say who doesn't have a place to stand, but I can tell you with certainty that there definitely won't be a place for you to stand. She blinked and her smile was 100 times sweeter than Wuxia's. The hidden bitterness in her smile was enough to choke people. Wuxia's beautiful face was distorted beyond recognition. Just as she was about to launch an attack, she saw Yu Pinyin standing not too far away with a meaningful smile on his face. They always said the same thing to different people in different places. This tacit understanding seemed to have long been engraved into his soul and made him extremely happy every time he thought about it. However, Xiang was wrong about one thing. Yu Pinyin strode over and tapped the tip of her nose with a smile. "Silly girl, you are not my sweetheart." Seeing his sister's tearful expression, he laughed out loud. He pulled her into his arms and walked away step by step. He added in an extremely gentle voice, "You're not my heart. You're my life. As long as I am Marquis Yongle, this Marquis Yongle will always be your home." Yu Xiang hugged his neck and buried her face in his shoulder as she smiled contentedly. Wuxia looked at the intimate backs of the two and broke her fingernails with a crack. The members of the Chiu clan standing behind her shook their heads helplessly. The author has something to say. Thank you to my cute little creatures and thank all the friends who supported the original novel. Mwax. Shen Miaoqi's pair of watery eyes searched through the crowd, skipping past the smiling Wuxia and looking straight at the young lady sitting in the wheelchair. The string of jealousy in her heart was stretched to the extreme and was about to break. She asked Nanny Qin openly and secretly about Yu Xiang's situation. She only knew that Yu Xiang had a broken leg when she was 10 years old. She had a fierce personality and a beautiful appearance. She was a wonderful person. Both Old Mistress and Yu Pinyin liked her very much. She had originally thought that the other party was on par with her, or perhaps even slightly inferior, because she had always been a beauty since she was young. Wherever she went, she would attract countless gazes. However, when she saw the real Yu Xiang, she realized that Qin Mama's hesitation in saying the word delicate wasn't an insincere compliment, but a helpless action because she couldn't think of a more appropriate adjective. He saw the young girl lazily leaning against the wheelchair with one hand resting on her knee and the other supporting her chin. Her beautiful eyes with distinct black and white were looking over, and there was a divine light shining in them that was brighter and more beautiful than the spring sun. Her skin was as white as snow and her pair of eyebrows were not the currently popular curved willow leaf eyebrows. Instead, they were thick and black sword-like eyebrows. The eyebrows were slightly slanted upwards and almost disappeared into the thick hair on her temples. Her exquisite and perfect facial features had the beauty of a woman and also revealed a unique masculine domineering aura. How could the word delicate describe her? She was beautiful to the point of being fierce, beautiful to the point of being flamboyant, beautiful to the point that there was nowhere to hide. Shen Miaoqi only needed one look to feel breathless. Yu Xiang was Shen Miaoqi's enemy. She would unconsciously use everything she had to compare with Yu Xiang to see who was better and who was worse. She originally thought that she was not much worse than Yu Xiang, especially after training hard for half a month. However, when she saw the real person, she realized that even if Yu Xiang did not know how to walk, she would not be able to hold up the aura of a noble lady in front of her. She only slightly raised her eyebrows and raised her chin. This simple action brought out 120% arrogance. Shen Miaoqi did not dare to take a second look. Her heart was in a mess and her steps were also messy. As she got closer and closer to the brazier, she repeatedly took deep breaths in an attempt to regain her composure. Just at this time, the sound of a servant's greeting could be heard from the door. Shen Miaoqi turned back to look and saw Yu Pinyin expressionlessly walking in with a spring-embroidered knife in his hand. If it was not for the fact that the Junjie passed away early, leaving behind the old, weak, women, children and a bunch of wolf-like uncles. Sun Tzu would not have to embark on this difficult and dangerous path. Yu Pinyin nodded and took his younger sister along with him. In the simple but elegant room, Yu Xiang was half sitting on the soft couch. She was playing with a snuff bottle in her hand, but her eyes were looking behind the screen that was emitting steam. Lulu stood outside the door and did not dare to enter. Her heart was as anxious as a cat. How could the older brother bathe and the younger sister stay in the inner room? This pair of brother and sister never knew how to avoid this taboo. It was fine when they were young, but now that they were older, they did not take it seriously. This habit had to be changed immediately. Otherwise, how would Mistress marry in the future? As soon as she stepped out, she stepped on the blood-soaked official's robe. The blood quickly climbed up the fabric to the tip of her shoe. The dark red color looked very frightening. Lulu trembled and quickly withdrew. She held her forehead and looked at Tao Hong, who was standing not far away playing with a bird. She sighed inwardly, "It's good to be a fool, there are no worries." The sound of water splashing could be heard from behind the screen. After a short while, a handsome young man with wet hair walked out. He was wearing a black brocade robe with only a jade belt around his waist. The lapel of his robe was wide open, revealing his strong chest and strong abdominal muscles. His bronze-colored skin reflected a lustrous light from the water, making him look extremely sexy. Yu Xiang's ears were hot, but her eyes were glued to the young man's body. Only when she heard a hoarse and deep laugh did she discover that her fingertips had already poked his hard abdominal muscles and were moving along the lines of his muscles. Her ears instantly turned red like blood. Yu Pinyin naturally held her small hand and slowly pulled it up. In the end, he placed it on his broad chest, letting her feel his growing impatience and desire day by day. His heart was beating very fast, but it was also very steady. Thump thump, thump thump. It was like a small hammer hitting her palm. Yu Xiang felt that her palm was not on his skin, but on burning charcoal. The temperature was shockingly hot. She moved her fingertips and wanted to pull her hand back, but the young man was one step ahead of her and released the big palm on the back of her hand. He handed over a towel and said, "Help me wipe my hair." The romantic atmosphere burst like a bubble. Yu Xiang blinked her eyes in a daze, then picked up a handkerchief and gently wiped her face. After that, she leaned on her brother's back and gently sniffed the sandalwood aroma from his hair, as she always did. The two of them did not speak. Their rapid heartbeats returned to normal in the silence. Yu Xiang slyly chuckled twice. Chapter 49. After washing up and changing their clothes, Yu Pinyin and Shen Miaoqi entered the main hall one after another. The old lady was already sitting on the main seat and waved to her granddaughter in her grandson's arms, "Xiang, come sit beside old ancestor." Yu Pinyin carefully put his younger sister down and sat next to her. The Lin clan ordered Mama Kim to pour tea and helped Shen Miaoqi to sit down before reproaching, "Yan, next time clean yourself up first before coming back. Look at how scared you made Chi, today. What if you hurt yourself? Moreover, today is our family's big day. Why did you come back with a body full of blood and bring so much bad luck for no reason?" This was really 14 years of not caring for her son, and the moment she opened her mouth, she complained that her son was not clean. Do you know why he was tainted with such a strong smell of blood? Do you know what kind of huge price he had to pay to support this family? Do you know how many life and death situations he had to go through in order to let everyone have a good life? Where were you when he was suffering? What qualifications do you have to talk irresponsibly to him? Yu Pinyin did not speak and only lightly glanced at her. The old lady was so angry that she laughed and slammed the table with a pang sound as she scolded, "This is Marquis Yongla, Yan-er's home. He can come back whenever he wants to. What right do you have to interrupt? If you dislike Yan-er, then get out of here as soon as possible." "Mama, go get the divorce papers. Every time she spoke to the Lin clan, the old lady would take out the divorce papers that she had already written to force her. After 14 years, she was really tired. If she was not Yendere's birth mother, she would have already thrown her back to her maternal family. If it was in the past, the Lin clan would have covered their faces and cried, ignoring the old lady's scolding. But this time, her daughter was watching from the side and she felt that she had received a great insult. Her face turned red for a moment. But she had not been in charge of the family for 14 years and the old lady had the final say in the household. If the old lady wanted to divorce on behalf of her son, she could only take her luggage and leave. She secretly scratched her palms and looked at her son with pleading eyes. Yupinyan lowered his head to peel the melon seeds and stuffed them into his sister's mouth one by one. He pretended not to see or hear anything. At this juncture, there was no place for Wuxia to talk, so she buried her head and pretended to be dead. The hall was strangely quiet for a moment, leaving only the sound of Wuxia munching on the melon seeds. Her big eyes with distinct black and white were looking at Shen Miaoqi's face. Shen Miaoqi spoke in fear and trepidation, "Grandmother, mother's heart ached for me so she misspoke. Please forgive this one." Just then, Mama Kim came in with a pot of tea. She quickly poured a cup of hot tea and knelt in front of the old lady. She said, "This is the first time your granddaughter has returned home. This cup of tea is for grandmother. I wish grandmother a long and happy life." With that, she raised her hands and looked at grandmother eagerly. Matriarch Tai stared at her for a long while before taking the teacup and taking a sip. She then handed over a pouch. "You're a discerning person. Get up. Keep this well and it will ensure your safety. Since you've avoided death, you don't need to take on other people's surname. In the future, you will be called Yu Miaoqi and will be ranked second. Xiang will be ranked below you and will be Miss 3. Shen Miaoqi respectfully took the pouch and used her fingertips to secretly pinch it. There was only a thin piece of paper inside and she did not know what it was. She poured another cup of tea and offered it to the red-eyed Lin clan. She softly said, "Mother, please drink this tea. This is the first cup of tea that your daughter has offered you. I wish mother good health and eternal youth." Lin clan immediately smiled and took the cup of tea and drained it in one gulp. She then took off the priceless jade bracelet on her wrist and put it on her wrist. She then took her into her arms and gently patted her. The scene of the two people quietly cuddling looked very warm, but it made the mood of everyone in the hall even more gloomy. Old Lady Tai twirled her prayer beads and sneered. Yupinyan simply turned his head away. Wuxia was worried that his heart would be unbalanced, so she brushed off the melon seed shells on her skirt and plunged into his arms. Her small hands reached out to his back and gently patted him. She used her actions to tell him, "Older brother, you still have me." Yupinyan scooped her up and placed her on his lap and smiled happily. Old Lady Tai tilted her head to look at the intimate brother and sister. Her tense face gradually softened and she waved her hand, "All right, since you have already met the elders, let's move to the side hall to eat. You three sisters can meet again in private." Shen Miaoqi withdrew from the Lin clan's embrace and obediently agreed. Her complacency before she came had long been replaced by apprehension. The Lin clan's position in Prefecture Yu seemed to be different from what she had imagined. Not to mention that old Lady Tai did not take her seriously, even Yupinyan and Wuxia treated her with indifference. How did the Lin clan survive all these years? A sense of crisis attacked Shen Miaoqi's heart. It was rare for all the masters of the family Yu to gather together. Therefore, today's meal was especially sumptuous. There was even a jar of good wine that was placed on Yupinyan's seat. After everyone sat down, old Lady Tai picked up some food with her chopsticks and then waved her hand to let everyone do as they pleased. Yu Miaoqi knew that she had said something wrong, but she did not know where she had gone wrong. Even if she was not the biological daughter of the Shen family, Mother Shen had never mistreated her. She had even given her twice the amount of motherly love. Therefore, she could never imagine that there would be a mother in this world who would ignore her own child like this. As the saying goes, a peck is a drink, and a bite is returned with a bite. The Lin clan's current awkward situation was also her own doing. Yu Miaoqi did not dare to ask the gloomy old lady Tai Tai. She could only look at Yu Xiang beside her. "Little sister, what does big brother like to eat? My culinary skills are not bad. I can cook for big brother personally in the future. It can also make up for the regret of us not seeing each other for so many years." After hearing this, Yu Xiang was even more unwilling to tell her. She hugged Yu Pinyan's arm and pretended to be ignorant as she asked, "Big brother, what do you like to eat?" "I forgot about it too." Yu Pinyan tapped the tip of her perky nose and said with a smile, "I like to eat whatever you like to eat." Yu Miaoqi gripped her chopsticks tightly and asked persistently, "Then what do you like to eat, little sister?" Yu Xiang tilted her head and looked at her. Her contrasting cat eyes sparkled with a sly light. "Me? I'm not picky. I like to eat everything." In the end, she was just teasing her. Not only was she hostile to her, but she also disliked her. But what right did she have? Who did she think she was? The fire in Yu Miaoqi's heart burned fiercely. Instead, she smiled faintly and lowered her head to eat with tears in her eyes. Her aggrieved attitude softened old lady Tai Tai's heart. She picked up her chopsticks again and said, "Don't talk while eating. Everyone, eat quietly. Today is a good day. Don't waste it." Everyone agreed in low voices. Yu Xiang no longer had any appetite. She moved a plate of drunk prawns in front of her, peeled the shell, dipped it in sauce, and stuffed it into her brother's mouth. Yu Pinyan poured half a bowl of egg custard into a bowl, mixed it with white rice, and fed it to her brother one spoonful at a time until they were half full. The siblings had loved to eat like this since they were young. Old lady Tai Tai was already used to it. On the other hand, Yu Miaoqi kept looking over. She did not show it on her face, but her heart felt like it was being scratched by a cat. She could see that in terms of ranking in the Marquis household, Yu Pinyan was the true master, followed by old lady Tai Tai, and then the Lin clan. If she wanted to have a foothold in the Marquis household, winning over the Lin clan was far from enough. She also needed to win the favor of old lady Tai Tai and Yu Pinyan. However, based on how much Yu Pinyan spoiled Yu Xiang, it would not be easy for her to occupy a more important position in his heart than Yu Xiang. Without Yu Pinyan's love, how could she live in the future? All kinds of calculations appeared in her mind. Yu Miaoqi felt like she had lost her appetite. Yu Xiang was also absent-minded. In fact, she really wanted to grab Yu Miaoqi and ask her how her family was doing. Although she did not want to leave with them, she still wanted to know about them. If they were doing well, then so be it. If they were not doing well, then she could still help them out a little. She would have done her best for the original owner. However, it seemed like old lady Tai Tai and her brother did not want her to have any contact with that family. She could only pretend that she did not know. She knew what was going on in her heart, but she still had to pretend to be ignorant. This kind of life was not easy. Everyone at the table had different ideas. Unknowingly, the meal was finished. Yu Pinyan did not want to stay any longer. After saying goodbye to old lady Tai Tai, he picked up his little sister and left first. Yu Miaoqi wanted to leave with the Lin clan, but Yu Siyu stopped her. The Lin clan was happy to see her have a playmate. They waved their hands and told her to go ahead. Yu Siyu led Yu Miaoqi back to her small courtyard. As soon as she entered the door, she asked, "Where is your original family? Why didn't you let them come and pick up Yu Xiang? Don't you hate her for taking over a magpie's nest for 14 years? That family is a lowly traveling merchant. Yu Xiang should be the daughter of a merchant family. This is letting her off too easily." The smile on Yu Miaoqi's face froze. She said in a low voice, I don't know what you're talking about. At the same time, her good impression of this stepsister of hers turned into deep malice. It was one thing for her mother, grandmother, and brother to know about the past that she had tried her best to cover up, but why did this person know as well? Without a doubt, Yu Xiu had surpassed Yu Xiang. She had become the obstacle that she wanted to get rid of the most. She was the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family, not some daughter of a merchant family. The author has something to say. Thank you to my patrons. In order to maintain this relationship, I will work hard to write. I will definitely update twice this weekend. If I see a single update, I will definitely make it up within a day. Chapter 50. After the two entered the room, members of the Chiu clan sneaked around the back wall and pressed their ears against it to eavesdrop. When Yu Xiu saw that she refused to admit it, she covered her mouth with a handkerchief and chuckled. Younger sister, you don't have to play dumb with me. I've known about you for a long time. I've been waiting for you to come back all these years. It's so pitiful that you went to that kind of family and suffered so much. Quickly tell older sister about it. She picked up the girl's slightly rough and scarred hand and gently patted it. Yu Miaoqi forcefully pulled her hand back and forced a smile. Older sister, what nonsense are you saying? I've always been fostered at Shuiyuan Nunnery, so how could I have any other family? I haven't seen my mother in a long time and miss her very much, so I'm going back to accompany her. When I have time in the future, I'll visit older sister again. After she finished speaking, she quickly left, ignoring Yu Xiu's pleas to stay. When she was far away, members of the Chiu clan crept out from behind the wall and pushed open the door. They advised, eldest miss, you're really muddle-headed. It's one thing for you to know such a secret, but why did you have to bring it up in front of her? Are you afraid that she won't miss you? You'll be able to get married after this period of time, so don't cause any more trouble. You old dog, you're eavesdropping on me again. Sooner or later, the heavens will send down a bolt of divine lightning to strike you to death. Why don't you go to Yu Xiang and tell her about her family background if you have the ability? If you dare, I'll give you 500 taels of silver. Yu Xiu pointed at her nose and scolded angrily. The Chiu clan member lowered her voice and said, even if young miss gave me 50,000 taels of silver, I wouldn't dare to ask for it, let alone 500 taels of silver. If this matter were to blow up, Master Ho would skin me alive and chop me into minced meat, and that would be considered light punishment. Who knows, he might even kill my entire family. Young miss, why do you want to send me to my death in vain? When she thought about how her older brother doted on Yu Xiang, Yu Xiu fell silent and tore her handkerchief to vent her anger. The Chiu clan continued to persuade her. Miss, you really made a mistake today. You think that by revealing second miss's identity, you're trying to form an alliance with someone who knows you well, but in fact, it's the exact opposite. It's fine if you don't say anything, but once you do, she'll definitely hate you. Think about it, if you ask the merchant to take Miss Xiang away, wouldn't her past be exposed? Being 14 years old in the Shang family and being 14 years old in the Marquis household were completely different. Now that this matter had blown up, the one who found it most difficult to maintain her standing was not Miss Xiang, but her. She would have an even greater and more glorious future. If anyone tried to stop her, they would be her enemy and she would do everything in her power to get rid of them. After standing still for a long time, she calmed down. She ordered Bao Sheng to deliver something to Yu Xiu as she walked towards the Lin clan's house. My child, you're back. Here are some bolts of cloth. Come and take a look. After matching the colors, I'll have the tailor make some spring clothes for you. Seeing that their daughter had returned, the Lin clan happily welcomed her. Yu Miaoqi walked over to inspect the cloth. It was all expensive Sichuan brocade, but the colors were somewhat old-fashioned. She couldn't help but frown. The Lin clan felt something and hurriedly explained, "These are the satin that mother saved up a few years ago. They're all tributes and are very precious. Although the colors are no longer fashionable, they're still good enough to make a few gowns." After saying that, she waved to Mama Kim, "Go and call the shopkeeper of Splendid Pavilion over. Tell her to only bring the most expensive jewelry and cloth. My daughter wants to choose." Mama Kim obeyed the order and left. The Lin clan pulled open a bolt of cloth and placed it on their daughter's body. Yu Miaoqi dismissed all the maidservants in the house and asked in a low voice, "Mother, how did you know about my background?" "Ah, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it." The Lin clan's expression changed greatly. "That year, your grandmother and I were discussing how to send Yu Xiang away, and she happened to overhear it. Mother, she even asked me today why I didn't let the family Shen take Yu Xiang away. I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to reply to her for a moment. Mother, what if she spreads the news about me? How will I face people in the future?" Yu Miaoqi took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears. After thinking for a long time, she finally decided to tell the Lin clan and let the Lin clan deal with Yu Siyu. She had just returned home and hadn't yet found her footing. It would be extremely difficult for her to get rid of Yu Siyu. It would be cheaper for the Lin clan to do it. She also wanted to get rid of Yu Xiang, but the premise was that her background couldn't be exposed. Now, she had no way to deal with Yu Xiang. She had nowhere to vent the grievances and resentment in her heart, but Yu Siyu had to bump into her and bring her bad luck. The Lin clan was also furious and cursed in a low voice, "That lowly wench isn't easy to deal with. She wants to use you as a tool to deal with Yu Xiang. Don't worry, mother will definitely think of a way to get rid of her. It's too bad that your older brother and old ancestor didn't agree to let Yu Xiang live alone in the farmstead. Son, bear with it for a few days. Mother will think of another way." When Yu Miaoqi heard this, her heart trembled. She hurriedly said, "Mother, what did you say to grandmother and older brother?" She was afraid that the Lin clan would push this matter onto her and cause her older brother and grandmother to dislike her. "I said that keeping her in the manor would be an eyesore, so it would be better to send her away. My son, I know what I'm saying. Don't worry." The Lin clan wasn't stupid. They just didn't want to be clear-headed. She knew very well what to do to make her daughter happy and satisfied. Yu Miaoqi breathed a sigh of relief. She threw herself into the Lin clan's arms and cried softly. Prefecture Yu was completely different from what she had imagined. She had thought that her family, whom she hadn't seen in years, would welcome her home in the most enthusiastic way, but in the end, they were even more indifferent than the last. Only the Lin clan treated her wholeheartedly. No matter how cold her heart was, it warmed up a little. The Lin clan patted her back and promised again, "Mother is here, so don't worry. Mother will definitely think of a way to get Yu Siyu far away so that she won't get in your way again. As for Yu Xiang, let's take it slow. She's not a child of the Marquis household, yet she still wants to occupy the Marquis household's territory. She's not afraid of shortening her life." The mother and daughter hugged and chatted for a while. Mama Kim led the shopkeeper of Splendid Pavilion over, followed by many maidservants carrying boxes. When the red lacquered boxes were opened, there were all kinds of precious jewels and fabrics. When the sun shone, the entire room was filled with sparkling colors. It was so dazzling that they couldn't open their eyes. "Madam, feel free to choose whatever you like. These are all the latest jewels and fabrics this year. They're treasures at the bottom of the box. If it were any other store, I wouldn't be willing to take them out." The shopkeeper smiled very flatteringly. The Lin clan led Yu Miaoqi forward to choose. She wore this hairpin and that gauze draped over her shoulders. She simply couldn't bear to part with them. After choosing for more than an hour, the Lin clan pointed to several boxes and slowly said, "How much are these worth? Calculate it for me. I'll take them all." The shopkeeper adhered to the principle of doing more and talking less. Although he was very curious about Yu Miaoqi's identity, he didn't take another look. He picked up the little golden abacus hanging in front of his chest and fiddled with it for a while. He smiled flatteringly and said, "Madam, the total is 3,568 taels. Please give me a matching tile so that I can withdraw the money from the accounts." Matching tile? What matching tile? The Lin clan was stunned. This is the Fu's rule. You actually don't know? Miss Xiang has said that anyone who spends more than 100 taels has to write a note and go to her place to get a matching tile. Chapter 51. After Yu Pinyin carried his sister back to the room, he was not in a hurry to leave. He went to the outer room, twisted a wet handkerchief, and wiped off the thick makeup on her face. A thorny rose instantly turned into a sweet and greasy piece of honey that was about to melt under the sun. This softness and sweetness only bloomed in front of him, making Yu Pinyin's heart tremble. A limp and numb aftertaste flowed from his heart to his limbs and bones. It was more intoxicating than drinking several large jars of strong liquor. He caressed his sister's delicate cheeks and looked at her for a long time. He found that there was still a trace of bright red lipstick on her lips. He gently wiped it away with his finger, then put it in his mouth and tasted it carefully. It was indeed sweet and greasy. Yu Xiang opened her clear cat eyes and asked heartlessly, "Is it sweet?" "I put a lot of beeswax and rose petals." "It's sweet, but it can be sweeter." Yu Pinyin handed the handkerchief to Lulu, who was a little dumbfounded. He took off his boots and got on the couch. He held his sister in his arms and took out a journal from behind her pillow. He slowly flipped through it, but he did not plan to leave. Lulu's heart was in his throat. He walked out with heavy steps and carried the basin out. Master Ho's actions just now were strange no matter how he looked at it. They were brother and sister, right? Why did they look like a newlywed couple? Yu Xiang did not feel worried at all. Instead, she giggled and poked her brother's hard chest. "How much more beeswax should I put in the dessert? I'm making lipstick, not candy." "Brother, when did you like to eat candy so much?" "After being together with you." However, Yu Pinyin did not dare to say this out loud. He pinched her white fingertips and said meaningfully, "The way you eat it is different, so the taste is naturally different. There are different ways to eat lipstick." Yu Xiang covered her mouth and chuckled. Suddenly, a light flashed through her mind. She was about to think about it when Tao Hong opened the curtain and said, "Miss, Mama Kim is here." The light disappeared in the blink of an eye and could no longer be found. Mama Kim was a concubine of the Lin clan. As far as Yu Xiang could remember, she had never stepped into his courtyard except for that one time when she gave him the demon-suppressing talisman. This time, she probably had something to ask of him. "Let her in." She snuggled into the crook of Yu Pinyin's arm and propped her head up to look at the miscellaneous notes with him. Mama Kim was dazzled by the scene in front of her. He saw the brother and sister pair, one handsome beyond compare, the other delicate beyond compare. They were leaning against each other on the soft couch, reading the same book together. Their heads were very close together, the tips of their noses almost touching each other, not to mention their breaths that had long since become inseparable. Mama Kim also felt annoyed. After hearing Yu Xiang's words, she felt even more embarrassed. She lowered her voice and said, "The madam sent this servant to ask for a match of cards from Miss 3. Shopkeeper Qian is waiting over there." Yu Xiang finally looked at her and said slowly, "You also know the rules of the household. Where are the list and the receipt?" "Let me see." Fortunately, shopkeeper Qian reminded her before she left. Mama Kim brought the list along and quickly bowed as she handed it over. Yu Xiang left her brother's arms and unfolded the list to look carefully. Yu Pinyin held her waist, afraid that she would lose her balance and fall. Yu Xiang smiled as she looked, but the words that came out of her mouth didn't carry a trace of joy. Look at how generous mother is. Gold silk incense wood inlaid with cicadas and jade beads, a palace makeup with 1,000 leaves of golden peony hair ornaments, an exquisite emerald grass head worm inlaid with pearls, a gold silk brocade gown, a cloud of butterflies skirt. I stayed by her side for 14 years, but I didn't receive a single needle or thread from her. I only received a pile of demon-suppressing talismans. I want to ask, am I really mother's biological daughter? She naturally knew in her heart that she wasn't her biological daughter, but in the eyes of others, she didn't know at all. It was normal for her to be jealous and ridiculed after seeing the list. Yu Xiang was just this kind of person. If anyone wronged her, she would return the favor regardless of whether they were in the right or wrong. If she could live a flamboyant life, she wouldn't be sullen. Although Yu Miaoqi hid it well, the deep hatred that occasionally flowed out of her eyes couldn't escape Yu Xiang's eyes. It was fine if she hated her, but she also hated her brother. This was unbearable. Since she harbored resentment and was waiting for an opportunity to take revenge, Yu Xiang didn't plan on tolerating her. If she showed her hostile attitude early on, she wouldn't need to feign civility in the future and disgust herself for no reason. Mama Kim lowered her head and didn't dare to answer. In front of Master Ho, who dared to say the word bastard? That person didn't need to live anymore. Moreover, for the sake of second Mrs. reputation, they had no choice but to acknowledge Yu Xiang's status as the legitimate daughter. Yu Pinyin put down his book and pulled her into his arms. He gently patted her and comforted her. Why bother with this? We're all grown up and don't need to rely on her. What does it matter if she's your biological daughter or not? Brother will buy you whatever you like. Even if you want the stars in the sky, brother will find a way to pluck them for you. The gloominess on Yu Xiang's face instantly dissipated. She hugged his arm and smiled sweetly. I don't want the stars in the sky. I only want brother. Brother is my whole world. As long as I have brother, I'm satisfied. Chapter 52. The Lin clan was still smiling as they helped their daughter comb her hair and tried on the hairpin, but after a quarter of an hour, they began to look outside. Half an hour later, their faces were distorted, so they sent a servant girl to look for it. Shopkeeper Qian opened the remaining red lacquer boxes and eloquently introduced their jewelry, which eased the awkward atmosphere. After a short while, Mama Kim came in with a box. Why did you take so long? The Lin clan questioned in a deep voice. Yu Miaoqi was holding a golden hairpin and putting on makeup in front of the mirror, as if she hadn't heard anything. Madam, Miss 3 searched for a long time before finding this box. She said she wanted to give it to second Miss, so she was delayed. Mama Kim handed the box over and found that it was covered in dust. It was obviously something that Yu Xiang had abandoned. She felt very embarrassed and quickly wiped the dust off with her sleeve. Mrs. Lin's originally gloomy face was now dripping with water. Just as she was about to reprimand them for going too far, shopkeeper Qian exclaimed, Aya, isn't this our Jinxiu Pavilion's one and only Luan and Phoenix circling pearls golden buyao? Not to mention that each of the 3 eastern pearls on the buyao is the size of a longan, which can be considered rare in the world. Just this box alone is expensive. This box is carved from a whole piece of Phoebe Jinan wood, and the lid is inlaid with several begonia flowers. The petals are cut and pieced together with the best red jade. The color is tender and beautiful, and it looks like a real flower under the sun. It makes people want to reach out and touch it. As she spoke, she took the box and turned it in the light. She clicked her tongue in admiration. 2, 3. Miss Xiang is so generous. This box alone is the treasure of our shop, not to mention the ornaments. Even if we sell each eastern pearl separately, it will cost this much. She stretched out a hand and shook it. Today was strange. Marquis Yongle had a second miss who appeared out of nowhere and said that she was Miss Xiang's twin sister. The two of them didn't look the least bit alike, and their temperaments were completely different. She didn't know where they came from. She didn't care, as long as she could earn money. Shopkeeper Qian muttered in his heart, but on the surface, he praised Yu Xiang's gift. Only then did the Lin clan's gloomy expression soften a little. He handed over the matching cards and said, "Take the matching cards and withdraw the money. Thank you for your patronage, madam. Next time, if you need anything, just send someone to call this commoner woman. This commoner woman's things can be considered one of the best in the capital. I definitely won't let madam down." Shopkeeper Qian smiled as she received her tile. After she left, she let out a sigh of relief. The Lin clan ordered Mama Kim to put away all the jewelry on the table. After deliberating for a while, she said, "That girl also said that madam might want to snatch the power of the family from Miss Xiang. The old lady, what do you think?" Hearing this, the matriarch was truly furious. She coldly snorted, "The power of the family? With just her? The current Marquis household isn't the same as the Marquis household during the Junjie era. With her little ability, I'm afraid she won't be able to handle it. However, if she dares to open her mouth, I can fulfill her wish." Mama Ma was greatly alarmed when she heard this. She reminded the old lady, "What if something goes wrong?" Just as the matriarch said, the current Marquis Yongle was very different from the past. Although Yu Pinyin had the title of General of the Light Cavalry, he had already returned the tiger tally to the Emperor. He wholeheartedly wanted to be the Emperor's sword, cutting through thistles and thorns to advance forward while bathed in blood. In order to pave the way for the Crown Prince to ascend the throne, the Emperor had already gotten rid of a few princes with different surnames. In the coming year, he would make his move against the entrenched and complicated aristocratic families. Under this situation, Marquis Yongle could only be a solitary official. He definitely couldn't associate himself with any party. Not only did Yu Pinyin have to control this, but the interactions between the women in the inner compound also couldn't cross the Emperor's bottom line. In the past, Yu Xiang had done very well. In the matriarch's opinion, he couldn't be any better. She didn't expect Xiang to be so intelligent. She could even figure out the Emperor's intentions so thoroughly. She didn't even need to remind her. Before the Lin clan became muddled, they were very clever and capable. However, that kind of cleverness was limited to the inner compound's small calculations and careful schemes. They couldn't compare to Xiang's broad horizons. If this family was handed over to the Lin clan, there would definitely be trouble. The matriarch thought it over, then waved her hand and said, "If she dares to open her mouth, then let her handle it. Xiang and I will watch from the side. Nothing big will happen." Xiang managed the Marquis household with an iron fist. She had learned it from her brother. With the Lin clan's petty tricks, it will collapse in just a few months. All these years, she has stubbornly stayed in the main room and indulged in the past. I can't find anything wrong with her. This time, I'll let her run wild. Once I find something to use against her, I'll have her take the divorce letter and go home. Her maiden family won't be able to say anything. After hearing this, Mama Ma finally understood the matriarch's plan. That's right. Missing her late husband wasn't a mistake. The old lady didn't want to tolerate the Lin clan anymore. After 14 years, she should be reaching the end of her tolerance. Chapter 53. When mother and daughter arrived, the matriarch was in the middle of her morning ritual. Anyone in the Lin clan who was observant would know of the matriarch's habits over the past 14 years. However, she was not observant and could only lead her daughter to sit in the side hall and wait. After pouring 2 pots of tea, she saw Mama Ma supporting the matriarch, who was covered in the scent of Buddhist incense, out. It's been 14 years. This is the first time you've paid your respects to me, right? It's truly rare. The matriarch leaned on the couch and slowly sipped her tea. However, she didn't even look at the Lin clan. The first time in 14 years that she had paid her respects. Then what had her mother been doing these past 14 years? Yu Miaoqi glanced at the Lin clan in astonishment. Only now did she understand why the relationship between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was so stiff. The Lin clan was rather embarrassed. Just as they were racking their brains to think of how to please their mother-in-law, they saw Wuxia walk in with morning dew. Seeing the matriarch, she was slightly surprised and immediately bowed in greeting. This gave the Lin clan a way out. It was rare that her attitude towards the concubine-born daughter was warmer than before. She personally helped the concubine-born daughter up. The matriarch waved her hand for everyone to sit. Her gaze swept towards Yu Miaoqi's waist. She pretended to unintentionally say, "Where's the protective talisman I gave you? Why don't I see it hanging on your body? That was consecrated by a senior monk. It can ward off evil spirits and protect one's safety." Yu Miaoqi didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, she smiled sweetly and replying to grandmother, because it was a gift from grandmother, granddaughter doesn't dare wear it every day for fear of wear and tear. I only put it under my pillow to ensure that I sleep peacefully. Granddaughter thanks grandmother for her love and care. If the matriarch hadn't heard the news earlier, she wouldn't have been able to see any resentment or disdain from this extremely sincere smile. Not only was her temperament so cold, but she was also very good at pretending. How did the Lin clan raise her to become like this? Not to mention that she was born with a fiendish fate, but with her cold heart and cold lungs, she would be a disaster to any family. The matriarch didn't deny that she didn't like Yu Miaoqi because of the Lin clan's favoritism. However, at first, she only wanted to compete with the Lin clan. When she saw the real person, that bit of dislike turned into 70 to 80% disgust. The more decent Yu Miaoqi behaved in front of her, the more it set off her treacherous and vicious nature. He had only given her a piece of talisman paper, yet she was already filled with resentment. How could she not hate Yandere, who had caused her to be imprisoned twice in the past? She was somewhat intoxicated, but she was interrupted by a noisy voice. "Someone's here, someone's here. Miss, someone's here." She turned to look. It was the parrot, Lu, who was hanging in the corridor. Yu Miaoqi seemed to wake up from a dream. She walked towards the door with a feeling of jealousy and resentment. To think that as the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family, she could only squeeze in with her mother, but Yuxiang had such an exquisite and dreamy courtyard. It was really unfair to the extreme. All of this should have belonged to her. Yuxiang was shaken awake by Lulu early in the morning. In her daze, she heard that the Lin clan had burned the protective talisman and wanted to seize power. She said disapprovingly, "Let her be. I'll see if she has the ability." Then her head tilted and she fell asleep again. Lulu had no choice but to order someone to bring breakfast. She shook the fragrant shredded chicken and matsutake porridge in front of her master's nose. She didn't need anyone to wake her up. Unexpectedly, before the porridge was brought over, Lu shouted. Lulu hurriedly welcomed Yu Miaoqi into the side hall and said apologetically, replying to second miss, "Miss is currently sleeping. I'll have to trouble you to sit down and wait for a moment. This servant will go and wake her up. I'll also go take a look. I naturally want to take a look at Mimi's boudoir." Yu Miaoqi smiled very amiably and took the lead to step through the doorway. The room wasn't big, but the furnishings were very luxurious and exquisite. The antique porcelain on the antique shelves were all very old. The furniture was made of Phoebe Jinan wood and rosewood, which were very expensive. The dressing table was very large, with a bronze mirror, a makeup brush, a grate, and other things. There seemed to be a lot of things in the dressing table. The lid couldn't be closed and was only loosely hung with a bronze lock. A pillar of sunlight shone through the window, faintly reflecting the colorful lights inside. If she really opened it, she didn't know how dazzling it would be. Yu Miaoqi's smile became even more graceful and appropriate. In reality, the tip of her heart was bleeding drop by drop. Thick venom flowed out from the festering wound called jealousy, corroding her bones until they hurt. What time is it? Why hasn't Mimi woken up yet? The sun is almost up to your butt. She sat down on the soft couch by the window as she spoke in a teasing manner. Her soft, gentle, and melodious voice was extremely pleasing to the ear, and no one would be able to imagine that at this moment, a roaring ferocious beast was being imprisoned in her heart. Yu Xiang mumbled under Lulu's push. Only then did she wake up faintly. She lifted the bed curtain and yawned as she lazily said, "Mimi, you're here." Seeing the girl's true face without makeup, Yu Miaoqi's heart was torn again. I'm the legitimate daughter of the Marquis family. My brother is also my brother. Why can you be close to me but not to me? Yu Pinyin was the real master of the Marquis family. It was because of his protection that she could establish herself here. Why couldn't this bastard be close to her? It was simply unreasonable. A wave of anger burned Yu Miaoqi's heart, but she still pulled out a faint and elegant smile and continued, "Jijia, please understand me. I haven't seen my brother for 14 years, Yu Xiang put her arms around her neck and smiled, "That's right. 14 years have passed. What's the point of seeing each other again? It's the same even if you endure for another 14 years. After all, you'll reach the age of marriage. Since Jijia isn't willing to agree, then let's go. I should eat." She let go of her hand and expressionlessly took off her hairpin, bracelet, and satin. She waved at Lulu, who was sweating profusely, "Send second miss back." She turned her face mercilessly. Yu Miaoqi had traveled extensively with Father Shen, but this was the first time she saw someone change their face so quickly. She was dumbfounded. It wasn't until Lulu urged her twice that she came back to her senses. She forced herself to maintain an elegant demeanor and said, "Jijia, why are you making such a joke? You scared me. I'll come visit Jijia next time." She slightly nodded, lifted the curtain, and slowly left. Lulu's face was red. She sent the master and servants out of the Chuehua gate before turning back and asking in a low voice, "Miss, why did you quarrel with second miss for no reason? You're all family." Yu Xiang ordered Tao Hong to push her to the dining table. She picked up the shredded chicken and matsutake congee and sniffed it. She slowly said, "Who's family with her? Don't be fooled by her gentle smile, she's probably cursing me in her heart. Look at her behavior. She burned the protective talisman that old ancestor painstakingly begged for. Isn't it because she hates old ancestor for ignoring her for 14 years? Her heart is smaller than the tip of a needle. She spends her days in the nunnery, while I'm enjoying the splendor of the Marquis household. Don't you think she's jealous? Since I've already seen through her character, why should I feign civility with her? I might as well shed all pretense of cordiality as soon as possible. That way, I'll feel more comfortable." Tao Hong was scared speechless. Lulu pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Someone with an indifferent and elegant temperament wouldn't be jealous. But looking at second Mrs. appearance, she's been blinded by lard and hates her whole family. She's been cultivating in the nunnery for 14 years, but she hasn't achieved anything. Isn't that so?" Yu Xiang scooped a spoonful of porridge into her mouth and muttered silently, "It seems that the family Shen is really down and out. Otherwise, how could she have so much resentment?" Yu Miaoqi covered her mouth and joked, so, sister's wedding date is near. Sister congratulates sister in advance. I wonder who is the son-in-law of our family. Yu was lacking a sister who would listen to her show off. She blushed and whispered, he is the Tanhua Lang of this year's imperial examination. He is from Yangzhou. His father is Minister Tong Fong of the Salt Transport Commissioner. Although he is only a fourth-rank official, his family is rich and richer than many aristocratic families. He was personally appointed as the Zhizhou of Yangzhou by the emperor. He took office a month ago. Yu Miaoqi listened very seriously. She sighed in admiration, Tanhua Lang. Then he must be overflowing with talent and outstanding appearance. Sister, congratulations on finding such a good man. Since the marriage discussion, this was the first person who was happy for her. Yu was touched in an instant. She whispered to her, sister, you flatter me. Fong Gongzi is indeed talented and handsome. But compared to this year's top scholar, Shen Yuanqi, he is still a bit lacking. The top scholar's appearance can be said to be peerless. He can almost compete with Big Brother. On the day he paraded his horse through the streets, many people were stunned. Flowers, purses, melons, and fruits were scattered all over the streets. Everyone loved beauty. Speaking of the top scholar, there were very few women who didn't praise him when they saw him. Of course, Yu Xiang, who could only accommodate one person in her heart, was an anomaly. Yu Miaoqi was playing with a hollow incense ball. When she heard the name that she had deliberately forgotten for a long time, her hand trembled and she threw the incense ball away. The calculations in her heart were all replaced by shock. The two maidservants standing at the door hurriedly went to pick it up. She secretly took a deep breath. When she opened her mouth again, her voice trembled slightly, sister, you said that Shen Yuanqi is really that handsome? That person was also very handsome. In the past, he had charmed countless young ladies. The iceman who came to the family Shen to propose marriage had even stepped on the threshold. This was the truth and not an exaggeration. Yu covered her mouth and chuckled, of course he is very handsome. I heard that when the emperor saw him, he even used a poem to describe a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. What an elegant and charming man's appearance, he is unique and outstanding. Everyone present laughed in agreement. Not only did he not feel awkward, he sat steadily and nodded with a smile. This caused the emperor to exclaim in admiration. Immediately, he was bestowed with a navy official's robe and became a scholar of the Imperial Hanlin Academy. He saved 4 years of exile and directly became an official in the capital. The emperor is really blessed. Otherwise, my prefecture you wouldn't have been able to tolerate you. The Lin clan didn't dodge. She allowed her to hit him. Taking advantage of the time when she stopped to rest, she spoke again, no matter what, your daughter-in-law is awake now. Your daughter-in-law wants to support this family again and let our son and daughter live peacefully and happily without any worries. How could she not want to reconcile with her son now? But it was obvious that her son didn't need her anymore. Her daughter was still so weak and helpless. This made her feel that her life wasn't completely useless. Worry about the future. You're the one who's worrying about the future. The matriarch sneered in her heart. She picked up the prayer beads and twisted them with her eyes closed. She didn't speak for a long time. The Lin clan didn't give up. She kowtowed 3 times and threatened, if mother doesn't allow it, your daughter-in-law will run to that bastard and reveal her identity. Let's see if she still has the face to stay in my Marquis Yongla. The matriarch suddenly opened her eyes. Her expression was so fierce that she wanted to eat the Lin clan alive. After 4 years of companionship and leaning on each other, she had long regarded Yu Xiang as her own granddaughter. What she was most worried about was that she would distance herself from her and Yen, or after learning about her identity and then make a fuss about wanting to leave. As expected, Yu Miaoqi's return woke the Lin clan up. But they didn't wake up in the right place. They actually dared to threaten their mother-in-law. The matriarch took several deep breaths to suppress the urge to beat the Lin clan to death. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try. Needless to say, the members of the Lin clan really did have the idea of privately finding Yu Xiang to reveal her identity so that she would know who was closer to her. However, once the old lady said this, she didn't know what to do. If what the old lady said was true, then Yu Xiang was like a copper ball covered in spikes. Once touched, it would prick your hand. The only way to deal with her was to use a heavy hammer to flatten her. However, she had the protection of the old lady and Yu Pinyin, two great gods. Who would dare to use a heavy hammer on her? Even if they said a few harsh words to her and caused her eyes to turn red, Yu Pinyin would chop them up with a knife. The members of the Lin clan's hearts were filled with fear. They turned to look at Mama Kim. Mama Kim nodded slightly, indicating that the old lady was telling the truth. Yu Xiang really had a fiery temper that couldn't be provoked. If they angered her, she could turn hostile and ruthless in a breath. It wasn't impossible for her to reveal the young Mrs. identity to the entire capital. The members of the Lin clan could only grit their teeth and agree. The Lin clan was clearly going to be in charge of the household, but it was as if they had lost a battle. They walked like they were floating and had no strength. Yu Miaoqi stood in the corridor to welcome her. When she saw this scene, she anxiously asked, "Mother, did grandmother refuse?" "No," old ancestor agreed. The members of the Lin clan led their daughter into the room. After the two of them sat down, they sent all the servants away, leaving only Mama Kim to guard the door. They leaned close to each other and began to talk in private. "Mother, you don't know, but that Yu Xiang was so unreasonable. She actually warned me in front of me not to get close to my brother. What right does she have? That's my brother, not hers." Yu Miaoqi began to cry again when she spoke of this. She continued, "I happened to meet my brother on the road and told him about this. He actually laughed and left. He didn't treat me as family at all. It really made my heart cold. It's fine, it's fine. You still have mother." The members of the Lin clan were furious, but there was nothing they could do. They could only hug their daughter and pat her. "In the future, mother will be in charge of the household. You won't have to worry about her attitude anymore. Mother will definitely find you a good husband. He'll make you proud and have great wealth. Your brother is now a first-rank great general of agile cavalry. He has millions of soldiers in his hands. Even the princes have to be courteous when they see him, not to mention those nobles. With our family's status, you can even marry a prince's grandson as his official consort. Why bother with a cripple like her? She'll never be able to marry into a noble family in this lifetime." In reality, she's just trying to scare eldest Mississippi. Just you wait. In a few days, the old lady will lay her cards on the table with eldest Miss and force her to peacefully choose a well-off family to marry over. Official Fong will be beheaded, the Fong family's wealth will be confiscated, and young Master Fong's official position will be used to atone for his crimes and redeem his old mother. How could such a poor family be worthy of marrying a young miss from the Marquis household? Even if it's a concubine's daughter, the old lady definitely won't agree. Yu Miaoqi nodded thoughtfully. The Lin clan chuckled. They lowered their voices and said, "In my opinion, it's best for Yu Xiu to marry into the Fong family. What's wrong with a poor family? A poor family is convenient for us to manipulate. Give them a few hundred taels and tell them to go to the capital to get rid of Yu Xiu. In the future, we won't meet again. If she doesn't behave and still wants to come back, give her another few hundred taels and directly kill her. Hasn't her reputation already been ruined? Let the Fong family publicize this matter. She can either marry or be drowned in a pig cage. The family rules are there. Even the ancestor can't say anything. Mama Kim, send someone to Yangzhou to find the Fong family's mother and son. Be discreet. Mama Kim lowered her head and complied. Yu Miaoqi was greatly satisfied. She hugged the Lin clan's mother and acted like a spoiled child. After the matriarch sent the Lin clan away, she sent someone to inform Yu Xiang of the handover. Yu Xiang didn't say anything and took out 14 years' worth of accounts, matching cards, keys, and other things. There wasn't the slightest bit of resentment. The matriarch was extremely satisfied. In her heart, she thought that Xianger was still the most considerate. She immediately ordered several sturdy women to carry several boxes of account books to the Lin clan. She was prepared to watch with folded arms. The author has something to say. I feel much better after taking the medicine. Although my brain is burned, I unknowingly wrote half a chapter more. Moreover, my writing style is very elegant. Damn, I'm starting to admire myself. Thank you to my rich friends, and thank you to all the friends who supported the original version. I won't kiss you today to avoid infection. Chapter 57. The Lin clan didn't expect Yu Xiang to be so straightforward. Before they could finish their private conversation, 3 large chests had already been placed in the courtyard. There were labels on the chests. 2 of them were the account books of the imperial household, and 1 was the dowry book of the Lin clan over the years. Yu Miaoqi's eyes darkened when she saw the labels. She asked, "Mother, did you entrust your dowry to her as well? Didn't she already know the truth 4 years ago? Why was she still so trusting of Yu Xiang?" The Lin clan felt very awkward when she heard this. She ordered the servants to move the chests into the room and explained, "For the first few years, I was unable to extricate myself from the pain of losing my husband. Therefore, the household affairs, the imperial household, and even the dowry were all handed over to the old ancestor to help manage. Presumably, the old ancestor also handed over the lands and shops that came with the dowry to her. However, I was completely unaware of this." Yu Miaoqi still couldn't let go after hearing this. She complained, "Grandmother already knew about her identity 4 years ago, but still handed over your dowry. It's clear that she trusted and loved her to the extreme. On the other hand, her attitude towards me was neither cold nor warm, neither distant nor close." The Lin clan hurriedly hugged her and comforted her, "My child, don't think too much. Isn't this because you weren't at home in the early years? The old ancestor was lonely and naturally needed someone to accompany her. Thus, she was won over by Yu Xiang. It's the same if you accompany her more in the future. Blood ties are there. There's no reason to be close to an outsider but alienate your family." Yu Miaoqi nodded and directly opened the chests that contained the dowry books. There were many account books neatly arranged inside, and the years were marked on the back pages. The head of the Lin clan took out one of the books and flipped through it. He sneered and said, "Put the account book aside for now. I'll look at it later. I have to check the dowry book carefully. If she did something to my dowry, I'll have to report it to the ancestor so that she can see the true face of this legitimate granddaughter." Yu Miaoqi's mind wandered, and she also took out a book and skimmed through it. She was shocked by the wealth of the Lin clan's maternal family. The dowry of land and shops was a bit too much. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was 10 miles of red dowry. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Mother, what does our maternal family do? How could he be so rich?" The Lin clan member laughed. "Your maternal family is also a merchant, but they are not lowly traveling merchants. Instead, they are imperial merchants appointed by the imperial family. They are specifically responsible for preparing porcelain, silk, and other items used by the imperial family. Your maternal grandfather is the only red-crowned merchant in the Han dynasty. That year, he once offered 5 million shur of grain to the divine ancestor who was fighting outside to resolve the danger of losing the war. As a result, he was conferred the title of censorate of the Secretariat, and his status is very revered. Yu Miaoqi originally thought that merchants were all lowly people, but after hearing the Lin clan's words, she realized that there were actually godly people who could achieve the pinnacle of being a merchant. And her maternal grandfather was the only outstanding one. The slight discomfort in her heart instantly dissipated, and she said with a smile, "So my maternal grandfather is actually so powerful. Should I take the time to pay him a visit?" The pride on the Lin clan member's face faded, and he sighed. "Your maternal grandfather passed away long ago. Now, your eldest uncle is in charge. Let's talk about visiting another day." The Lin clan was originally the eldest legitimate daughter of the Lin clan, but the current head of the Lin clan was her eldest concubine-born brother who she looked down on the most. Her younger brother was a wastrel. Because he took too much 5 minerals powder, his bones were damaged, and he couldn't have children in this lifetime. As a result, he lost the right to inherit. Because she helped her younger brother fight for power, she had a falling out with her eldest concubine-born brother, and she hadn't returned home for a full 20 years. Her younger brother was now living on his own, and the few remaining family assets had long been squandered away. From time to time, he would find Marquis Yongle to ask for money. Yu Xiang was very generous every time she gave money, and she used all of the Lin clan's dowry. This caused her youngest uncle to nod and bow when he saw her. His attitude was flattering, as if he was treating his own ancestor. However, the Lin clan was completely unaware of these things. Yu Miaoqi saw her gloomy expression and didn't dare to ask more. She thought that she would privately ask Mama Kim for more details, so she smiled and said, "Then let's do it another day. I won't hide it from Mother. When I was in the family Shen, I often helped Shenshi look at the account books. If Mother is too busy, I can help." "Oh. My daughter is actually this capable. Then that's good. Let's immediately carefully examine these account books. If there's a problem, we can bring them to the old ancestor to discuss it." The Lin clan took out all of the account books and began to examine them from the beginning according to the year marked on the spine. Yu Miaoqi picked up the abacus and looked at each line, calculating one line after another. Her speed was very shocking. Because the mother and daughter wanted to find fault, they repeatedly checked each number. When they were halfway through the examination, they really did find quite a few areas with large deficits. Lulu was even more puzzled and asked, "Why? Didn't we already hand over the power of the household? We don't have anything left here." Yu Xiang simply stopped sleeping. She ordered Tao Hong to bring her a plate of melon seeds. While eating, she said, "She's such a selfish person. She's definitely more concerned about her own dowry book than the household. Coincidentally, there's a problem with her dowry book. The deficit is very large, and she hates me to the bone. She won't wait until she's finished reading all the books before she makes a fuss about it in order to slap me in the face." "Deficit? Miss, you embezzled her dowry?" Lulu was so scared that her face turned pale. She stammered, How much did you embezzle?" "The gold, silver, and treasures that Master Ho usually gives you aren't enough for you to spend. Why did you have to be so stubborn as to steal her dowry? If this matter really gets out of hand, you won't have anywhere to hide your face." Not only was Yu Xiang not frightened, but she was also overjoyed. She threw the peeled melon seed shells at Lulu's head and joked, "The emperor isn't worried, but the eunuch is. Look at Tao Hong, he's so calm. Am I that greedy in your eyes? The good things that brother usually gives me are much more valuable than her dowry. That's because she's stupid and doesn't know the seriousness of the matter." Lulu bitterly patted the melon seed shells off her head. She thought, when Miss is valiant, no one can stop her. When she's unreliable, she's also really unreliable. It's hard to say whether other people would embezzle their mother's dowry, but when it comes to her, she really would do it. It's not because she's greedy, but purely to cause trouble for the Lin clan. Who knew that even if she didn't embezzle it, those things were still left for her? Oh, maybe not anymore. The darling of the Lin clan is back, so master shouldn't have a share of the dowry. Could it be that master knew that this day would come, so she took the risk? Lulu fell into all kinds of imagination. Tao Hong glared at her and scolded, "You're the stupid one. Can't you see that Miss is so calm?" "This definitely doesn't have anything to do with Mississippi." Yu Xiang patted Tao Hong's arm and praised with a smile, "My little Tao Hong is finally smart for once. I'm not afraid that she'll make a fuss. On the contrary, I'm afraid that she won't make a big enough fuss. In any case, the person who will lose face in the end won't be me." Before Miss took over, the old lady was in charge of the household. If it wasn't Miss's problem, then wouldn't it be the old lady's problem? Hiss, it can't be, right? Lulu suddenly felt alarmed and frightened. She lowered her voice to the lowest possible level. "Miss, if the old lady has a problem, then this matter will become even more complicated. It'll be a shocking scandal. You have to quickly inform the old lady and suppress this matter." Chapter 58. It wasn't easy for the Lin clan to get hold of Yu Xiang's weakness. Even if they offered to send her to the countryside to make the purchase, grandmother dowager and Yu Pinyin wouldn't be able to say anything. How could a daughter be so impatient to embezzle her mother's dowry? In other words, if she could embezzle even her mother's dowry, what else could stop her greed? Such inferior behavior was enough to suppress Yu Xiang until she couldn't raise her head. Even if grandmother dowager and Yu Pinyin insisted on protecting her, she wouldn't be able to run rampant in the future. The more the Lin clan thought about it, the more pleased they became. Their footsteps quickened, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived at the entrance of the main courtyard. Yu Miaoqi followed closely behind. Mama Ma, who was standing in the corridor, saw the two of them and quickly entered the room. She whispered, "The old lady, they really came." "Humph!" Grandmother dowager gently twirled her prayer beads and slowly said, "They only waited for 2 hours before coming here. They're too impatient. I'm afraid they didn't even look at the account books after that." Mama Ma lowered her head and didn't dare to answer. She knew that there would be a commotion in the room soon, so she gave Wan Shou a look, hinting for her to get rid of all the irrelevant people. "Make a fuss, make a fuss. How much trouble has she caused in just 2 days? Let me count." Grandmother dowager put down her prayer beads and calculated with her fingers. Her smile grew colder. "She's indeed a jinx. Since she came back, there has been no peace in the family. I thought she would be able to persuade the Lin clan to stop, but I didn't expect her to be even more restless. All she wants is to fight for the family's favor and the family business. Does the Lin clan not favor her enough? She dares to set her sights on the family business. What does she think of my her? If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have brought her back in the first place." Grandmother dowager shook her head and sighed. Mama Ma comforted her softly, "You're not that cold-hearted. How could you watch your granddaughter wander outside and not bring her back? It's also because she's young and frivolous. If you wake her up and slowly train her in the future, you'll be able to cut her into a new shape in a year or 2. Train her? With her inferior character, it would be useless even if I trained her for a few 100 years." This was a sign that her roots weren't good. She had inherited the teachings of the Lin clan. In the end, it's all my fault. It's all my fault for not being able to see through people back then. I welcomed such an unreliable person into the family and even gave birth to a little jinx. That's why there's no peace in the family now. The more the matriarch spoke, the angrier she became. She was just waiting for the Lin clan to come in and deal with her.